was getting ready to bring us into the promised land. It looked like we weren't going to be able to go. But God dried up this river and He brought us over on dry ground. And it was so that generations could see that our God is faithful and that He is mighty. And He can do anything that we can ask or even imagine. And He has the ability to lead our lives. See, the pile of stones represents God at work. And when I get to heaven, I can't lie, I'm going to be a little nosy. I'm going to ask God to take me back to that point where they crossed over the river. Maybe a few weeks after that, while they were sitting around the campfire. Because I want to hear the stories that they were telling of how God delivered them from Egypt. And how they got to the Red Sea and it looked like there was no place to go. And I could see them around the campfire saying, there was no hope, but God made a way. And when we got to the Jordan River, He was faithful to bring us to the other side. And I wonder how many times Joshua went back to this pile of stones and he just sat there and thought about what great thing that God had done. What I want to do is I want to encourage you this new year to think about the stones that God has set up in your life. If anything, think about the greatest stone, the rock of Christ, who is the rock of our salvation, who is the rock on which we stand. He's the firm foundation that allows us to move and breathe and have life and wake up every morning. And He's the rock that brings us into the promised land. And not just to stop there, but to start to see how God wants to set up stones in your life where He will do amazing things. And you can look at the present situation and say, God, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I look back and I see how You brought me through the Jordan River, and I can see how You're going to continue to be faithful in my life. Start to build stones this year. Look at stones that you built last year, and let that be the moment of faith that allows you to spring forward into greater faith in this new year. It was one of the greatest things that they could do, was to set up these 12 stones and remember what God had done in their lives. I'm going to ask you to stand this morning as we close. It's exciting to be at the dawn of a new year and to be expecting God to do something great in our lives. To know that if we will just step out with just a little bit of faith, if we will trust God just a little bit, He'll be faithful to come through in your situation and in any situation that you face this year. And the one thing that I want to leave you with this morning, the one thing that gives me the greatest joy, is that I know that God will rejoice with you in your greatest moments. And He'll be with you in the darkest of nights. Because I know that this year is gonna hold all kinds of trials and circumstances, and it's gonna hold some great times, and it's gonna hold some bad times. But if we will hold firmly to the rock of Christ, He'll be faithful to bring us through. And when we get to the end of this year, we'll have piles of stones that'll lead us into a greater year for the next year. Let's just bow our heads in prayer as we close this morning.